If you were passing down an alley in 19th century Britain and saw a young boy named Henry messing around with a car, you wouldn't have looked at him twice. What you may not realize is that this little kid would go on to revolutionize the world of cars, starting off only with $70, out of which 50 were borrowed from a friend. Stay tuned, because we're going to tell you the story of how a poor kid invented Rolls-Royce with only $70. First up, Henry Royce's early life. Frederick Henry Royce was born in 1863 in Alwerton, England. His parents, James and Mary, ran a flour mill, but they lacked the business skills to make it as profitable as it should have been. And since they never really made good money, Henry Royce's early life was mostly just rags and no riches. 4 years later, in 1867, when Henry was just at the age of 4, disaster struck the Royce family. Their finances had gotten so bad that they had to file for bankruptcy. The end of the year saw everyone in the family pitching in to sustain their bread and butter, even little Henry Royce, who only earned 4 pence a week and worked as a bird scarer for local farms. With time, things started to look a little better for the Royce family, but tragedy struck yet again as Henry's father James died in 1872. As difficult of a time this was for Henry and his family, they barely got the chance to grieve the head patriarch's death in the midst of their growing financial responsibilities. And at only 9 years old, Henry Royce found himself selling newspapers to make ends meet for his family. Naturally, these tragic events changed the young boy. Forced to mature before his time, Henry Royce learned the value of hard work the hard way. For him, he had always had to do backbreaking work to get where he wanted in life. But it was this conviction that would eventually propel him to the top of the motor vehicle industry. As we discussed earlier in this video, Henry's family struggled with finances. Because of this, by the age of 15 years old, poor Henry had only completed 1 year of school. He simply couldn't afford to do it anymore since he was too busy working to support his family. Things would turn up for the 16-year-old Henry soon enough, though. An opportunity came knocking on his door, an apprenticeship he had applied to with the Great Northern Railways, and his aunt agreeing to support his passions. What later ensued was 3 years of a young Henry embarking on the most fruitful academic years of his life. While acting as an apprentice at the Great Northern Railways, Henry used his spare time and aunt's support to study. He studied engineering, algebra, and French. These years were incredibly productive for Henry and went a long way in helping him flesh out and achieve his vision. However, as was the theme of poor Henry's life up to that point, the prosperity would not last. He was forced to quit the apprenticeship and suspend his studies due to, once again, a lack of funds. However, if there was one thing Henry Royce wasn't, it was a quitter. Starting a company with only $70. So after Henry's apprenticeship ended, he sought employment at a tool company in Leeds. Afterward, he found work at the Electric Light and Power Company in London. This work led him to Liverpool in 1882. Henry Royce had a passion for engineering, and it was beginning to blossom. This passion eventually led Henry Royce, now 22 years old, to start a company with his friend Ernest Claremont. Ernest contributed £50, and Royce put forward the £20 he had in savings. And so, F.H. Royce & Company and the building blocks for Rolls-Royce were founded on all of $70. Yes, you heard that right. $70 only. As of September 2022, Rolls-Royce has a net worth of $1 billion. Talk about rags to riches. Henry worked around the clock to make the best electrical components, and his efforts paid off. The company kept expanding. By 1894, Henry's company started making electrical cranes, and for the first time in his life, Henry was actually doing well financially. However, Henry was not satisfied. He had always had a passion for motors, and this passion of his, unbeknownst to him, was about to take off even more than it already had. As important as Henry was, he was far from the only important figure in the company's illustrious history. It's time we learned about the Rolls in Rolls-Royce. Charles Stuart Rolls was born in 1877, also in Alwalton, England. However, unlike his future partner Henry, his upbringing was lavish and exuberant. The child of Lord and Lady Langaddock, he studied mechanical engineering. He was known for tinkering with machines, which earned him the nickname Dirty Rolls. Can you believe that the word dirty was ever associated with the Royce name? Coming back to Charles, he was one of the very few undergraduates in his time to own a car at the age of 18. Most people hadn't even heard of cars when Charles got his first one. After graduating in 1877, Charles Rolls worked at a steam yacht and Northern Western Railways. Though he studied mechanical engineering, he was also interested in motoring, pioneering, and salesmanship. And so that made most of his professional efforts. With the help of his father, he opened one of the first car dealerships in the UK. It was named C.S. Rolls & Co. His company imported and sold Pajero and Minerva cars. He was a rich man, and he had some rich hobbies. Rolls enjoyed cars and was also a huge fan of aviation. His company was making him a lot of money, and he was spending a lot of that money back on his hobbies. Unfortunately, money wasn't the only thing that his hobbies would cost him. Henry's budding interest in motor cars. Henry soon developed a decided interest in motor cars. First, he improved a second-hand two-cylinder car that he owned. However, as was often the case with Henry, that simply wasn't enough, so he decided to build his own. In 1903, he built his first petrol engine, and by 1904, he had made his first car, which boasted 10 horsepower. Afterward, he made 2 more, giving one to his partner and one to Henry Edmunds, who was a shareholder and friend. This was the same Henry Edmunds that arranged the meeting between Charles Rolls and Henry Royce. Rolls meet Royce. It all started when Edmunds boasted about his new car to Charles. Charles, at the first time, was frustrated at only being able to import and sell foreign cars, and recognized this as an opportunity to do more. And so the meeting was set up. Rolls was impressed with the car instantly, even though he preferred 3- and 4-cylinder cars. After his test drive, a deal was struck on the spot, and Charles began his work on selling Henry's cars. As two individuals, the pair could not be more different. Royce was 41, and Rolls was 26. Royce had grown up in poverty. Rolls was basically Richie Rich. Rolls was a well-learned man. Royce was self-taught. Despite all their differences, though, they formed one heck of a duo. Because even though they couldn't be more different, they had one thing in common: the hunger to be the best. And so, Rolls-Royce was born in 1906. What followed was a 6-cylinder car, the first ever edition of the now legendary Rolls-Royce Ghost. Don't forget about the hyphen between Rolls and Royce, Claude. Claude Johnson was a friend of the two innovators and was the managing director. He was a genius when it came to marketing, and was actually the man who coined the now iconic, not one of the best, but the best car in the world. For his contributions, he is often referred to as the hyphen in Rolls-Royce. Next, Charles Rolls' tragic passing. As we discussed earlier, Rolls loved aviation. He bought a Wright Flyer aircraft and was actually the first person to make a non-stop double flight across the English Channel. However, just a month later, at a flying display in Bournemouth in 1910, he died in a plane crash at the age of 32. He was the first British person to ever die in a plane crash. With Rolls' tragic passing, Henry was left to spearhead the company by himself. And as you probably know by now, when faced by adversity, Henry did the only thing he knew. He worked and pushed through it. After Rolls' death and during the First World War, the company started making aero engines. This was not only good for the company, but also held sentiment for Henry, as Charles had once recommended that they make aero engines, but Henry had refused. Next, another legend bites the dust. Henry struggled with his health for most of his life. These struggles would finally best the visionary in 1993 when he passed due to digestive tract problems. Henry's health problems stemmed from early years of poor nutrition and a lifetime of overworking himself. Still, Henry being Henry, continued to work till his last moments on his deathbed. with his final designs being sketched moments before he passed. Rolls-Royce is one of the most successful luxury car companies in the world. Cars like the Wraith, Ghost, Phantom are icons in the car industry. They still produce some of the most expensive cars in the world, and their brand name is associated with the height of luxury. We think it's safe to say the two men would be proud. That was the video. Remember to like, share, and give us your thoughts in the comments and subscribe.